There's a place I go where nobody knows. Ghost town. Friends are there. Ghost town. Life was there. Ghost town. Not a sound.
This downtown Toronto factory closed back in 1989, putting its 650 workers out onto the street. As I look around at what used to be a busy place, I became interested in what the unemployment numbers don't show. When a factory is closed, a lot more than the paycheck disappears. There's a lot of history, culture, and traditions that used to live inside these factory walls.
Does any of this bring back memories? No. It seems like we were out here every 3 years.
Yes! That was your fault!
It's good. It's good that we can be out here for a change and we're not on a picket line on a 6-month strike.
We're on a picket line!
Well, in a way. The last time I spoke to everybody was November 29th, 1989. You remember that?
Yes, I do!
And I remember telling everybody, I said, I wasn't going to miss Inglis. I was going to miss you, and we're all going to miss each other. Isn't that what happened? Bill, this is the truth. I dream about Inglis twice a week. You know, this is the truth. I dream I'm on the dryer line next to Singh. And I got McIntyre on my back, God rest him, and I'm falling behind on the job, and he's going to fire me. I want to take you back about 20 years. 20 years ago, if you recall, this used to be a busy place around here. Let me give you a tour of what's going on now. Inglis, gone, 650 jobs. Molson's, gone, 800 jobs. Massey Ferguson, gone, 3,000 jobs. Dr. Ballard's, gone, 300 jobs. General Electric, gone, thousands of jobs. All the manufacturing. This was the hub of manufacturing in Toronto, and it's gone.
Whatever happened to the promise of wealth and leisure for everybody in the space-age future of automation and technological progress?
In the space age, the appliance industry will continue its lifelong love affair with you, the American people. There will be new departures that herald even more exciting adventures in homemaking. New freedom from kitchen chores. New horizons in food preparation and home laundry care. But tomorrow's promises have their roots in today, the world we live in. Here, now, where it's at. Your home is what you make it. The appliance industry offers products you can buy with confidence and stands ready to make the future even better, more reliable, and more convenient than ever before.
What was really sad, what was really the gut-wrenching day was the day that a lot of us had trouble dealing with, was the last physical day. Seeing that last washer go down the line and everybody signing it, the hugging, the crying. People worked up until noon. Mike and I went out and started down the line shaking hands, and it just got so emotional for me, I couldn't deal with it.
A lot of people was crying tears when it come down to the last day. Before the last day, we start to take pictures of everybody, you know. Most people who have camera, they bring the camera into work, and we start to take pictures because some people you may never see again, that you work with for years. I start to take picture and hug, and I tell you, it was a crying, and I say I wouldn't cry. And when everybody started to hug me, I cry like a baby. I say I hope the camera, because a lot CBC, all different kind of camera was there from networks. And I say I hope they didn't catch me. I felt it to my heart. A lot of people do. I guess everybody do.
Yeah.
People it's like a part of you die. I say I wouldn't want to go through that again.
Well, this is the last part you were talking about, the feeling of the people.
Yeah.
Well, when I was quite angry, I was really angry because I could see, you just throwing people in the gutter, There's no reason for it, and I just used to sit in the kitchen and look up the window. What good out here? I'm 58 years old. I'm not old yet. I still got my intelligence, still got my health, and nobody wants me. I try to get part-time jobs. No, sorry, too old. And everybody's proud. Everybody wants to earn their living. Nobody wants handouts or stuff like that. And they took our dignity away to a degree. Our purpose in life, Little dreams, Everybody had little dreams, and another 5 years of be able to retire and do this and do that, but it's cut short,
People have to go on welfare.
Oh, all kinds. There's still people I know on welfare today.
Well, I came to Canada in 1949, and one old immigrant, old guy, he says, if you get in Inglis or Massey, there's a union there. I think this man was a CCF that time. CCF. I didn't know what CCF is. He says, well, some people were saying they would call us a communist, this capitalist propaganda. So he says, you try to get where the union is. He says, then you have a job for lifetime.
A lot of lifetimes were spent at the John Inglis Company. It operated for over 100 years at this one location, and in that time, many thousands of workers passed through its gates. 17,000 built machine guns here during World War II. After the war, the assembly lines were retooled to feed Canadian demand for all sorts of domestic products. In the final years, they made just one product, washing machines, built for the Canadian market under license from the American parent company, Whirlpool Corporation. Up until the 1960s, though, the company was also a major builder of large-scale industrial projects.
But when the boiler shop closed up, that was quite hard too, because we had some of the top tradesmen in the world at Inglis,
Like the beer tanks, they totally amazed me. The size of them were bigger than the house I was born in.
Although initially when we first started in Inglis, they wouldn't hire any married women. It was all single girls, but everybody felt that they had to do their bit for the war effort, and this is what the women were doing. That's why they were here. And this is what we worked on. They had women doing jobs that men had always done in the past, thought nothing of it.
When the war started, I was very happy to look toward getting into it. I had not worked in such a place before, and I was astonished when I went to join at the gates of John Inglis. I could see all the women. They were wearing overalls, but rather natty, rather good looking, and they had their hair done up, and they all looked a little. I didn't think they could work really very well that way. I had thought they'd be wearing overalls that were oily and greasy and so on. The biggest shock, of course, was not just what they wore, but inside the clamor, the noise of these turret lays and steam pressures, and it was greasy and dirty in a way.
When we started, there were two shifts, a 10-hour and an 11-hour, 7 days a week. Well, we had no life, right? You didn't know whether you were coming or going, or whether it was breakfast time or supper time. It was lots of fun. When the union got in, we immediately got a swing shift, 8 hours.
I was astonished to see how many people you could pack in between all these machines, and women. They were coming from as far away as Newfoundland. 17,000, mainly women, had come in to in the war work. And if they had children, that was a double problem. And when we were having union meetings, and we decided very quickly that we needed it because our wages were something like 42 cents an hour, I believe. But we were going to increase the hourly rate, and that was our main thing. The other one was to see that we weren't going to do anything that would get in the way of the war effort.
Perhaps to be best if I told you, I was a member of the Communist Party. And when the war was on, and it was decided that it was a war against fascism, then the organization encouraged people like Janet and I to go into the factories and organize unions.
Organizing a union at Inglis involved bridging the competing ideas of both communist and social democratic activists. This political debate continued with the victory of industrial unionism, representing all the workers, over the more exclusive interests of the previous craft-based trade unions.
We used to leaflet like 3 shifts, too, and we had a little office on Queen, just at Bathurst, and quite often we come off shift and I used to sleep on the office table, right? And then we get up and go and leaflet. You know, when you're young, you do all these kinds of things, and they're lots of fun, too.
The eventual victory of the Steelworker Union came after a campaign of bitter reminders of the high unemployment and low wages which followed the end of the previous war to end all wars. On the home front, another kind of war was fought against both union and political organizers.
I already very soon was known as a union person, and when the vote was taken, they transferred me to the Bren department, and I was escorted to vote by 2 big security guards. I came in one day and I'd forgotten my little tag, dog tag, and they took out my file, and it said on it, make copies of everything for RCMP. So the RCMP were already aware that I was there.
I hated it. I worked in the fuel pump. It was a dump. It was a constant haze of cast iron filings, cuttings, and I said, Jesus, what am I doing in here? I worked in Douglas, big modern plant. Come into this, midden. In fact, my first pay was $37.84. I've probably still got it, the cheque. And it was an old Scottish guy, Jakey Hockey, and an old Scottish woman, Charlotte Russell, that said, where are you going? I said, oh, I'm quitting. I said, nah, $37. How can anybody live in that? So they taught me out of it. And 18 years practically to the day I was there. Killer.
Myself? Well, my mother worked there for 30 years and got my dad a job there. He worked there for 27. I was still at school. I got out of school. My mom said, well, you might as well come down and try to get an Inglis. I started maintenance, sweeping floors. Wasn't making much. Only started there at $2.89 an hour back in 1972, but it was a job.
Some people came here to Canada, and that was their first job. And that was their only job. And they worked in it for 40 years. That plant was unique in a lot of ways. It had a real sense of family. And I know of other plants that have said, well, yeah, there's that sense of family. But I mean, you have generations that worked in there. You have families, husbands and wives, brothers and sisters, sister-in-laws and brother-in-laws. There's something that develops over that period of time. Like I went there in '76. I'm really considered relatively one of the young ones.
Well, we're just numbers, eh? You know, there's no concern. You use the people, their blood and sweat, their ingenuity, all these years, and there's no good reason for coal steel plant. Not because they're not making the money. It's just that they want to make more money, and that's that's pretty low, I think. There's no principles there.
My first day on the line was, I hated it, actually. I hated it for months because, I mean, it's an assembly line. It's a moving assembly line. And so you're doing, it's repetitive, it's boring, it's terrible work. I can say some nice things about it that you learn over time. Working on a line, you learn to do things easier. The joy of working on an assembly line is actually the people you work with.
A lot of socializing or interaction took place right in the work site. Because when people are telling you their complaints about a collective agreement or what a foreman or a supervisor had done to break the collective agreement, they usually reveal something on a personal nature as well. I've had so much time off because my children are ill, or I've had so much time off because my wife is ill or my husband is ill. And you get to know people without them really thinking that they're revealing very much information, but initially they are. And before you know it, you become intertwined with every person that you interact with.
The first day I started at Inglis turned out to be a typical day in Inglis over the years I worked there. I come in, I was hired as a chipper grinder. And the buzzer went 7:30 for everybody to get up and move, to go to work, so being a new hire, I popped to my feet, and then all of a sudden I had a hand sit down. And I couldn't figure out what do you mean sit down? And he says, we're on a work stoppage.
And I worked at the job for 3 days. Just loved it. And fourth day I came in, everybody said, well, sit down here and we'll have some coffee and we'll have a talk. Well, I sat down and I was sitting there for maybe a half hour, and I said, well, when are we going to work? They said, oh no, we're not going to work right yet. I said, okay. So I kept on sitting, and I said, well, how long will it be until we go back to work? Well, we're not going back to work. We're on a sit-down strike. Oh, I said, what does that mean? They said, we have some problems over in the boiler shop, and until they resolve those problems, we're not going back to work.
I learned very quickly that when people are angry, they do things in that plant. And one of the things they did is they used to walk off the line. They may not walk off for a long time. They may only walk off for a few minutes or for half hour, or in 1981 for 2 days. But they walk off and they get back. And there was a tradition of that. There was a political tradition in that plant. There were CCF clubs in there. People, reading groups, there was the Communist Party was in there was everything in there. But you learn that over time. I didn't know that at the time. When I started, all I knew was the fact that people knew their rights and weren't afraid to fight for them.
The first job I had the next day was unloading some zinc agitators, and the first day, and They give me a wagon, a big wagon. I looked at the wheels, they weren't too solid. So I complained to the foreman, I said, these wheels should be fixed before I start moving the jet. He says, just do what you're told. So I did. And coming off the elevator, the wheel fell off and they all went over the floor. And he come up to me and says, what'd you do that for? I said, I told you about the wheels before I unloaded. So he started getting a little nasty, so I took one of the posts off the thing, chased him down the aisleway. That was my first day at work.
There's a lot of pressure on people, and there's pressure on supervision to get production out. And that's ready-made then for an adversarial confrontation type of environment. In 1981, we had a 2-day wildcat where over 200 people paraded in the plant singing Solidarity Forever. How many plants have you seen that happen? I think this is an important, I want to add this because I think it was the most mind-boggling thing. And then somebody picked up the loudspeaker and started singing Solidarity Forever for the whole plant. I mean, really, we're supposed to file a grievance. And I mean, that's the law. The law is if you have a problem, you file a grievance. But we didn't break, well, we broke the law often at Inglis. It had a tradition of wildcat strikes. Long before I was there. I don't want to take full blame or credit for these. It's just that this was the most unusual strike because it lasted as long as it did, and because of this parade through the plant.
But like I always said, people love their jobs, you know. Despite, you know, people complained and what have you. But, I mean, if anyone off the street walking into a plant like Inglis or the old Massey plant, you know, you think you're walking back 100 years, you know. And if you've never experienced it before, what the hell are these people doing working in there?
And they all work together. We always help each other. New people come in, you know, we show them the job, and look at the foreman, you know, just throw the guy on the line and give no instructions whatsoever. In those days, there was not any safety whatsoever. You know, you had to argue for a pair of gloves when you were handling steel and stuff like this. Where's your old one? You know, I could just give you a pair a month ago. They're only cotton gloves, they'd be all ripped and torn. So all these little, you know, bitty things that should have been commonplace, you know, just given to you for the safety of the people. That was, you know, continuous battle. In the old days, in the pressure days, some guy get his fingers off. The setup man come along with a cloth, just grab the fingers, throw them in the garbage. Another operator, you know, never concerned about what happened or how did it happen. Just get that production out.
Now what do I do, Jim? You got all the clothes in? Yep. And close the lid and set the timer for about 12 minutes. That's all very true. To a woman, the most important thing is how it looks. Yes, styling was important to Nancy, sure.
You know, when a thing's engineered right, it's beautifully simple.
Simple. That's exactly the point. Appliances? Why, it's the same with furniture, automobiles, houses, anything. If you want to make it easy to live with for a long time, it's got to be made simple. Simple and functional. That's all there is to styling. Well, at least that's what I always say.
Sometimes you almost shoulder to shoulder. Sometimes you have to stay there, give me some elbow room, you know. Because some will be putting on wires, some will be putting on knobs, some will be putting on all different kind of stuff to complete it. So you have to be close, a lot of people.
It's not really much that I think of, but on the 600th time, at 2 every minute, 9:20 a day, ooh, it blows my mind. And working is hardly what I call good news. The line, it is boring, your mind you could lose, but the job it does bring us together, and then makes it easier to fight back again.
When you're working on the line and you have a lot of work doing and you're really going fast, it becomes very good. And you're doing very fast that you could, if a guy miss a wire, instead of get himself in trouble, we put the wire on for him, and the foreman will eventually see that. And they end up time study you over again. And say, well, you got time. You never have any more time, really.
The foreman comes over, says, seems you got time, pick up a wire and a label. He says Santo and Dennis, well, they got time to put some work on their stations. And working is hardly what I call good news. The line, it is boring, your mind you could lose. But the job, it does bring us together, and then makes it easier to fight back again.
It was very antagonistic. Maybe it's the nature of the work, because there's a lot of pressure on assemblers because you're keeping up with a line. An assembly line doesn't understand if you have diarrhea one day, or if your wife left you, or if you're sick, or the line just keeps moving.
One of the guys on the line, they suspected he was drinking, and he had a cup, and it was rum and coke. I guess Higgins could smell the rum, and he picked it up, and he got a hold of me, and I in turn got a hold of Paul. Paul Ryan was the chief steward in that particular department, so I got a hold of Paul, and Bob Higgins go over to Paul. He picked up the drink. He wouldn't let it out of his hand, and he said to Paul, he said, "Smell that." He says, doesn't that smell like rum and coke to you?" Paul took the drink, drank it. "No," he said, "that's just straight pop." He passed him back the empty cup. So.
In the beginning, the union was a little bit conservative with only Canadian people. From East Indian, I was the first person. Before that, Inglis didn't hire any East Indian. I was the first person. And I was the first person who wear the turban. In the beginning, I have a lot of problem. People shouting, making noise when I come in department, but I ignore stuff.
It was a multicultural factory. You have people from all over Europe, from Canada. You have people from all over the West Indies island, different part of the island work there, you know. And you get to share food, and you sit and you listen to other people's culture, and you get closer to other people and know about them. So instead of you wondering, you know, you even start to pick up a little bit of the language, Dobra, you know. Everybody could speak a little bit of every other language. I mean, even one syllable, even good morning, you know it. That's how close it was. And that was good, you know.
In every family, they are not same attitude, and they are not same thinking. If you have 5 members of your family, they are not same thinking. It doesn't mean they have a discrimination, but they are individual thinking. I give you example. I was working on dry line. I forgot that name of that guy. He is a good person. Always laugh, we sit together. One time he came over there in my department, and he tried to take my turban off. Not due to some other reason, just as a joke. I was a little bit mad because this is my religion. So, and not intentionally, but unfortunately it happened, it's a bad joke. I had a utility knife in my hand, I was cutting the tape. So he raised a hand like that to take my turban off. Then I had a knife, just I did that way. Not intentionally, but unfortunately it happened. Then he cut his arm from here to here. It took around about 56 stitches to recover that. So it was bad joke, not discrimination, you can say.
We had United Nations there, actually. You mentioned there were people from different countries, but there was a cooperation. Sure, we had some time, like a family, you know, problems, but when it's come to the nitty-gritty, people stick together. It shows you even those strikes. There were long strikes, but we didn't give up. Some people were desperate, but we always stick together.
So we were out for 26 weeks. We went back to work and they allowed the scabs to stay in the plant. That was the people that had taken over our jobs. We went back to work 1 cent less than what we went out for. It was a very difficult decision. We went back, but we went back together. And it took us almost 2 years to get rid of the last scab out of the plant because we would not sit with them, we would not talk to them, we would not answer them if they talked to us. We would not even, if you were walking out to the time clock and they were walking beside us, we would either go try to get ahead or behind and not be anywhere near them. We didn't help them 1 minute. They took our jobs when we were on strike. They were one of the reasons that we weren't successful at that particular time, but we were successful in other years because of that.
Let me ask you, I'll ask you. Do you accept this package the way it is?
I've been walking on the picket line. I'm not gonna worry, I ain't here alone.
They'll not go fast until we have language in our contract that allows us to say no to unjust and incompetent management.
I got my sister, I got all of my brothers. I'm not gonna worry, I ain't here alone.
I talked about the strikes. The strikes are part of the building blocks that bring people together. It's amazing how you can work side by side with somebody and not really know them, and spend 6 months on a picket line with them. You'll create friendships that weren't there before. So the struggle that people went through and the militancy and the togetherness also added to that.
Yeah, we got pride, we are determined, we got a soul, we got a past, we got a future, we got the future of our kids, we got a feeling which every strike day goes.
There's a number of factors that led to the pulling of the plug in the Strawn Avenue plant. I'll start with free trade, but the free trade was, I think, accelerated the process. The Inglis plant in Toronto was a microcosm of the whole Canadian manufacturing. If I was to say why Inglis closed down in a word, I would say corporate greed. This Whirlpool Corporation based in Benton Harbor, Michigan was using this place like a cash cow. With little or no investment, they were able to pull in millions of dollars. And the thing is, they were able to get away with it, even though they had old equipment and the place was falling apart, with a 17% tariff and a 70-cent dollar. It was still cheaper to make washing machines and dryers in this plant than it was to make them in the States. So they could make money, and the place was running inefficiently. But if you take away the 17% tariff with free trade, and you let the dollar go up to 89 cents, well, what you're left with is what you got behind me here, rubble. Hundreds of lost jobs and memories. Branch plants are inefficient structurally because they're only allowed by the parent corporation to make for the Canadian market, which is 10% of what the American market is. They have to make the same models, they have to make the same colors, they have to do all the things for the marketplace that's done in the States, but they don't have the economies of scale to do it. Just by the nature of the industry, it's going to fail. And a lot of branch plants are in the same situation that Inglis was.
We have to sacrifice all the time. It's a working man, I don't care whether it's Inglis, GM or anywhere. It's a working man that's got to make the sacrifices all the time. When there's any mass layoffs, who is it gets laid off? Mulrooney? Trudeau? Harris? No, it's us that gets laid off, it's us that has to suffer.
Because all the shareholder and all these itty-bitty corporates, you know, sit in offices and never seen a factory. I bet they've never been in a factory in their life. Making all these big decisions that affect, you know, whole neighborhoods. You know, when we close down, how many other people are involved? You know, people supplied us all the parts, even down to the paper boy, eh? The local grocery store around the area and the local pubs, they all had to close. When I look from here in the fall, you can see downtown Toronto, all those thousands of people working. They don't produce nothing, eh? Just shuffling paper. Where's all the money come from, you know? Somebody has to produce something to sell it, you know?
Stockbroker is a good job. He make good money, but that's not producing other job for other people. We are the worker. We make the machine. We make other job for other people too.
Here's a couple of newlyweds shopping for their new home. Now watch this. Excuse me, sir. That stove you're looking at, do you know whether or not it's imported?
There was a strong sense of pride, a strong sense of we were doing a good job. In my home right now, every product in my home, in white goods, I've got a countertop range, a built-in oven, my fridge, my washer and dryer are all Inglis products. And there's a reason why they are. My mother has Inglis washers and dryers.
Electricity, gas, mechanical servants, you know, something about, freedom from drudgery, sort of like that.
Oh, you mean like today we women have it easier than the pioneers?
Honestly, Carol. Oh, my gosh. That's a terrific angle. Talk about emancipation. Take the family wash, for instance. No more clotheslines, no more dark basements, no more Blue Mondays. Boy, here's real emancipation from old-fashioned chores. Just set a dial and walk away.
Years back, when all the plants in that area finished work and you were heading up to get the streetcars, well, the line up for the streetcars were 15, 20 minutes before, like if you didn't get out and scoot up the street quick, you had to wait 15, 20 minutes for a streetcar. So the first thing was, oh, well, we'll go over to the Palace for a couple of beer until the crowd disperses and then we'll get a streetcar. But then it was, once you got a few beers into you, then it was a few more.
The Palace is an interesting place because they used to, like, you had Massey Ferguson, they had Dr. Ballard's, all the carpet places along King Street, the abattoir workers, and the garbage workers, they all come there, right? And it was wall-to-wall people at noon hour, right? And you only got a half hour, right? And they have trays and trays of beer on every table. It's all on your honor. Whatever you drank, you put your money on the tray, and that was it.
But I think in future years, they've come to the conclusion that they would help people in those areas that did have the alcoholic problems. Yeah, a lot of us had that alcoholic problems, but there was a lot that didn't. But it became a social type of pattern. We worked hard, we drank hard, and we fought hard. And I would guess because of the heat and all that, I would guess that prevails that you wanted something to drink. I guess we could have drank Coke, but beer was closer.
When we were organizing the union, you used to go there for your lunch hour, And they used to try and make me drink as much ginger ale as they could drink beer. You can't do it, right? You can't do it. So we used to use that as a way of getting new members in the union. And we didn't have too long to sit there if you were going to go home after your shift, right?
Quite a few guys lived at the Palace and worked at, had rooms upstairs in the Palace, and like I say, you couldn't walk up Strawn Avenue to get a streetcar. The lineup was that long from the tracks right up. And now, you could roll a bowling ball there and never hit a person. Now we had some good times though. You could buy anything in Inglis. There was bootleggers. You could buy from a pair of nylons to a whole complete suit if you wanted to. We had them all, and there was every type of person, and even the bootlegger. Well, it was great. You know, if you're a lot of guys were somebody's birthday, so well, we need to have a few drinks, or we need a bottle. So you get in touch with this guy, and he'd go over and he'd make a phone call. The taxi would come down, and over in the second bay of General Engineering, on the far wall, right across from the police station, right directly across from the police station, there was 2 bricks, and somebody had taken the motor out from all around the bricks, and they slid out. So you slid the cab driver would just pull his cab in there, roll down his window. He'd take one of the bricks out on his side, you pull the one out on your side. He'd pass the bottle through, you pass the money out, and put the 2 bricks back in, and nobody was any the wiser. And that went on for years.
Remember, this is assembly line. It's very difficult for workers to control their working environment. But even those of us who worked on the line, we never worked according to the breakdown of an industrial engineer. We worked according to what made work easier for us. We had a lot of control even over our work environment, and that's unusual in an assembly line environment, that we could even control that. And the only time we worked to the breakdown was a work to rule, when we wanted to prove that a breakdown was unworkable. And so we would work to the breakdown, stop the line every 3 minutes, and then a foreman would come running over to me and says, whatever you did before, do it. Fuck whatever the industrial engineer says. The line's got to keep running. Do whatever you have to do. And so that even in that sense, we could control the labor process even on the line, really. But I think what makes a work a factory is not only controlling working environment to the degree, whatever degree possible, is the fact of having a strong union that fights for its members, and a membership that understands its rights and is willing to fight for itself. There's a whole culture involved in that, and a tradition, and being aware of that culture and tradition, so that people are proud of the work they do, proud of the product they make, but proud of the fact that they're union people, and proud of the fact that they're a militant union people. All that to me is, given that we own the plant, that's about as good as it gets. That's a worker plant to me.
Looking at these photographs makes me think of my own father going off to his job. The lunchbox that he carried, he must have thrown it away after he retired. I never saw it again. He was happy to retire because he put his time in, not because the company was closing down.
Every time I see somebody from Inglis, actually, the last day actually appears in my mind again, just like a movie, and it goes over and over in my mind, because I knew that there were some people that were going to make it and others that were not, and for many different reasons. Again, some people went on from there and got employment immediately. Other people needed a little bit more help than others, and some people needed a lot of help in order to be reemployed. And the thing is, a lot of people didn't want to become reemployed specifically because they were afraid of leaving one family and starting with a new family.
But all the years I've been there, the saddest part, like you say, was the last few days, trying to put on a brave front. You knew it was happening, and to try and keep your head in the air. It's fine to have these fast McDonald's and the Harveys and all the hamburger joints, but some of these people can't qualify even for that. They were good at what they were doing in the plant. They were great. You put the assembly line, put them on the assembly line, show them a job. They were excellent. You couldn't ask for a better worker. Take them away from that, and you know what can they do?
These are people going on welfare who had never collected unemployment. These are people, remember, average seniority was 17 years. It was very difficult. Some of them are still on. We still have English people on welfare. When I read all this stuff about welfare people not wanting to work, you know, I feel like killing somebody, because I see how many people we had who never missed a day in 20 years on welfare because they only had grade 9 education. Those jobs are gone, the English type jobs. They can't find work, you know, with what the kind of work they're used to. But they'll take less money. But even those jobs, some of them, over the last, like I say, over a little while recently, they've been able to get some of the real shit jobs. But there weren't even shit jobs in the early 90s. And so they didn't want to be on welfare. And they had a tradition of working for a living.
I left Inglis and I was just heartbroken. I just didn't know what to do. Part of my life was just left there, you know. All your friends you had to say goodbye to that you've known for 18 years, that was the hardest part.
One of the hardest things for me was not losing my job per se, but the fact that I was losing my union. I felt like it had been shot out from underneath me. That is a very hard transition. If you've been active and a union activist, and it's not just me, it's everyone that goes through it, and all of a sudden you're no longer a vice president or a president, and your whole life has been wrapped up in being involved in that organization, doing other things in that organization outside of your local, going to rallies, having that connection, and all of a sudden you're no longer a union executive, you're no longer a steelworker, you're no longer a dues-paying member. I have the distinction of being the first and the last female vice president of Local 2900 at Strawn Avenue. I don't know what kind of a distinction that is, but...
When you work that long at a place, it's part of your life. You think of it as almost like your family, your job, your community. They're all intertwined. I mean, there's no humanity in this. No humanity at all. You know, you have to realize that it isn't just you, it's the whole society that has no use for people anymore. They just toss them out. And I suppose they always did that, but it's becoming more obvious. And groups that thought they were immune to such treatment are now getting it themselves.
I started out wanting to tell the story of how people cope with losing a job in these terribly uncertain times. I learned that there's much that the unemployment numbers don't show. The year that the Inglis factory closed, it made money. I guess it just didn't make enough money. In spite of whatever arguments that can be made to justify tearing down a factory such as Inglis, it's the people who work there who have to suffer, and all of us share in that loss.
See the road ahead, it gets smaller yet, I wonder. Can't they all see what this bloody place means to me? This ghost town. Just live there now, they haunt me. Please.